It's good to welcome you guys to another episode of The Basin.
The Basin,
The Basin.
Why do I always say it like that? I need to stop.
The Basin
The Basin.
podcast.
It's been long enough now. Everyone knows the Basin.
Absolutely. It's really exciting. The Basin is all about welcoming individuals and people wherever they are into our own personal life, into our home. So it's been a busy summer. So it's good for us to have another episode of our podcast, which is amazing. But we have a new topic. This is regards to a pivotal moment in our lives. You can call it the come to Jesus moment. And I remember one of my pivotal moments was, I came to the United States when I was a teenager. I was 14 years old. And I lived in a place called the Bronx. The BX. And that happened to be around the period of 9/11 as well. So first of all, came to America during a precarious period in American history, like a crazy moment in American history. People were still mourning. Everybody was thinking, what's going on? That's when I came here. And then I was going through a cultural change, coming from a different country, to live in a place, not even cultural change of a different country, but also go to it's going to live in a community that is known as the ghetto, and it has this ups and downs that comes with that.
We all lived in the ghetto at some point
in New York City, in New York City, and that has kind of molded my life because I know that around that period was when you're a teenager, you're finding yourself, you're finding your place. And for me, I had to go through some high schools when I came in. And I shared this with you before, and we talked about this. In 3 years, around 9/11, people were going through a difficult time, but you're also dealing with a lot of high school stress. And I went to 3 different high schools in 3 different years. And I said that because the first high school I was going to go to, my dad was going to sign me up for this high school, and somebody got shot and killed. And then we were like, no, that's not the school we're going to go to. And then I went to the second high school. Nobody got shot, but I got beat up.
On the first day?
Oh, no, it wasn't on the first day. A couple of months in, I got beat up so bad, I almost lost my eye. Especially then, I was probably wearing glasses. I looked like a nerd.
Ooh.
So a lot of times people
that why they jumped you?
They go after people they perceive as weak or not as a threat. I won't say weak, but whoever that looks like a nerd or a geek.
Yeah.
So I got jumped so bad, I couldn't continue in that school. So I spent my 3 years, but throughout my high school years, it was a moment of I could barely make friends with people because my whole life I was fearful throughout my high school years, to be a extent that I would wake up in the morning, my heart would be beating very fast, and I couldn't tell my parents that.
No way.
So I didn't have the best experience in high school because.
So you would wake up in the morning and you were just.
I was fearful.
Anxiety.
I had anxiety. I mean, now if we're going to call it PTSD, maybe.
Also from the trauma of being jumped.
Of being jumped, of going through the pressure of high school. And there was a lot of bullying that happened in high schools. So I went through a lot of bullying. I went through a lot. So because a lot of times you can tell you're just different. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a lady in high school. Her name was Miss DiMeglio. So
dang, you remember her name? My gosh.
So she went to my.
Miss DiMeglio, if you're watching, you are in trouble.
She was no. She was actually a cafeteria. I don't even know. She had an administrator, and I remember her going to my dad, and she was almost pleading with my dad, and she was like, "You need to get this kid out of this community, get him to a Catholic school because." In the Bronx, there's just no good public schools, there's no good high schools. So he was almost pleading, and my dad was like,
"What triggered her to do that?"
Because she felt like maybe she perceived me as too innocent for the environment of the people I was in. So our own perspective was that I'm around people that a lot of them are not going to make it to college. A lot of them are in jail. A lot of them, the school was basically keeping kids out of jail than getting them to college. So why I ended up there is a lot of immigrants, like my parents, who are not so aware of what schools are. And a lot of times they don't know. They just don't know. So they just send you to any school that is close by because they don't have to pay money for it. It's a public school. Unfortunately, the kids that suffer for it, like kids who are immigrants or children of immigrants who come here and they find themselves in an environment that they didn't choose it, but that's where their parents are. But all that just to say, all those things happened to me. My high school years were very difficult. But that was also the moment where, even though I have a foundation in Jesus and faith, but my faith was the only thing I could hold on to. It was my own therapy, because what I went through is what you would call like a traumatic period in somebody's life. And people who go through those situations, I usually go through counseling, therapy.
That's true.
Because what I went through really impacted me in a way that now I'm looking back and I feel like you also did it with parents who did not understand the generation, the kids they deal with. So there's a cultural gap. They don't understand what I was going through as an individual, that I needed a special attention. So it was me figuring things out, but the only way I could find out was, where I started praying more or read my Bible more, because I was really living in fear. And
so how did that affect you in your adulthood today?
I went into college. So after I finished high school, a lot of those kids did not make it. I mean, the last high school I went to, so I take that back, I went to Stevenson. So I started with TAF. TAF was one day. I went to Stevenson High School, I think for 1 year.
You went to school for 1
And
day.
then I graduated from Lehman High School in the Bronx, which that was way better. There was more diverse, and there was no Bloods or Crips who were really good. But I think at that point I was determined. So I finished my last year. Unfortunately, I wish I've started at Lehman High School a lot earlier because it was better. But a lot of it was my life started in college. So I went to a community college for 2 years. So that was when I was determined that I wasn't going to let my fear shape me. So instead of using everything I went through in high school, where I was intimidated, I was fearful, I was hiding a lot of my gift and my talent. I couldn't focus on school in high school. But I went to college with a lot of determination that I felt like there was a sense of call to be a leader, to use my experience for good. So when I went to college, I was studying hard, but at the same time, I got involved in like student government and leadership. So it was my way of saying, I'm not going to let everything I went through in high school mold me, and I'm not going to let that silence me. So it was a way to push myself through the bullying, through the pressure, through the traumatic situation that I think some people have gone through what I've gone through.
And they have not made it.
And committed suicide. Or they're forced to actually pretend to be or join the Bloods because they have to prove to be tough. Because the mind of young men is very different. It's either if you're weak, they want to crush you.
That's true.
And then you have to pretend to be one of them. And the only way to be one of them is now you acting and behaving in a way that you can be accepted.
That's so
but
true.
then there's me that's like, I just removed myself from everything entirely. So there were no friends, there were no close relationships throughout my high school years. It was in college, I feel like I grew into my own. And that's where I was challenged to be an overcomer, to overcome those things where I felt like I was on my own because I did not feel like anybody could relate to the face of life for them to even empathize with the things I had to overcome.
Your pivotal moment was in your community college.
A pivotal moment was a determination to not let my past shape me. So that's when I took on more roles. Those leadership that I had in college were things I would have loved to do in high school. I just went to school for the sake of it, but it was more like I just want to make it. And a lot of things. There were so many other things I was dealing with. So, I mean, that's a lot of me, though. But I would love to know your pivotal moment.
What is my pivotal moment? I don't know.
So there was no come to Jesus moment. What shaped your faith? What shaped your leadership? So nothing happened. You just came out of the blue, and EJ is who EJ is. Nothing impacted you.
I feel like my entire life has been increments.
Yeah.
I don't have a big bang. Everybody has this, tell me your testimony. I don't have a big bang. This is what shaped me. I think it's been increments. Day after day, little by little, step by step, has been what has made me who I am today.
I think your pivotal moment, your You grew up in church.
Yeah, so I grew
And you
up.
led a worship team. I think those are a leadership pivotal moment. Don't you think that molded you?
All right, so
That didn't challenge you at all? 16 or 17 years old, taking over a worship team?
I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a pivotal moment. I was forced to step into a leadership that I had never. Okay, I guess that was a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
So I should talk about the story of it.
Yeah, would love to hear like how that impacted you. Like taking on a challenge that you were 17 years old
Yeah, I was like,
doesn't have a capacity to.
yeah. So at 18, I mean, you already know the story. For others who don't know the story, at
Yeah.
18, I was asked to
Yeah.
become a leader of a worship team, where the members are adults.
Yeah.
They're older, and I had to step into it. But is that what has shaped me into who I am today? I think I am who I am because of the people that have been around me.
Mm.
The people the Lord placed around me. They challenged me, family, friends, church members, leaders, my pastors, parents, sisters. I think they're the ones that have guided me. They're like, you know how you have a fence around, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
don't do this, do that.
The
And you-
guardrails.
Yeah, guardrails. In the midst
Yeah.
of that, I kind of wanted to rebel. I wasn't allowed to rebel. Holy Spirit won't let me. And I think that's a big part. I've always felt the hand of God on my life.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't shake it off. When the hand of the Lord is upon you, you cannot run from it. And that's why whenever I pray for people who I hear their stories, I always pray for the Lord to arrest them. I've always had a desire to be a wayward person, to be crazy. You know me, you give me a nickname, Shaniqua. But I have the
No,
desire.
if your name is Shaniqua, please don't take it personal. It's just all the interesting part of you, right? When that comes
I
out.
have an interesting part
I
of
haven't
me.
used that in a long time, though.
I know.
Yeah.
But you know that crazy part of me that just wants to like go crazy and not care about the consequence.
Yeah.
But Holy Spirit has never let me be that person. So I think that's why I don't have a pivotal moment. I came to the Lord at 15,
Yeah.
right? Was I the way I am then? No. But I still did some crazy thing, made some bad decisions.
Yeah.
But I always feel like I tell my family like I am who I am today because of the Holy Spirit, honestly.
Yeah. I think we are who we are because of the Holy Spirit, but we all who we are. The Holy Spirit is one ordering our steps, but we're not supposed to be where we are. But there are moments that has really lifted us to do more than we can.
I think being
And I think you know, it's kind of
Maybe I don't-
It's kind of like come to Jesus moment. Like when you ask people, how did you get saved?
it's not the same,
Right.
babe. No, it's not the same because getting saved it's not like I feel like there's this expectation that we should all have a big bang situation that occurred, and that's why as a Christian I always struggle with tell me your testimony. I'm like, I don't have a testimony, and I mean it. I have a testimony of God's work on my life.
Yeah.
I don't have a pivotal moment that I said this is it. But if I was to think about like throughout my life, are there like key points that I think about? I think because I'm someone that loves music, I love worship. I love anything that has to do with music. So I would defer to the time where I was forced to go from being just a worship team member, to being a worship leader, and I was leading adults. That was massive because I was forced to step into leadership I wasn't forced to,
Yeah.
but I was challenged to. So would I say that's a pivotal moment in my life? No,
Yeah.
It just stretched me. It made me realize that I have a lot of patience to grow in.
Yeah.
Like people tested my patience,
Yeah.
but it also showed me that I really have the capacity to be a really good leader if I step into it. But do I always want it? I run from it. But I was really happy that my pastors then trusted me with something so heavy. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll call it a pivotal moment, but I think it was one of my pivotal moments. I'm thinking about others. What are my other pivotal moments in life?
I think you coming up with a music album been challenged to be on bigger stages. I think you went to Nigeria, sang in like
Wow,
some,
you're telling this story.
you sang,
You have more
you sang-
memories
you
than I
sang-
did.
You sang in some major churches in Nigeria.
All right, so I'll share that.
And then you also in
Do you
New-
want to tell the whole story
in
of
New
my
York, in
life?
New York City as well, you had major platforms. These were not small churches. Whichever way, I'm not saying that makes any difference, but
I
you had
know.
a season where it almost felt
Why
like.
don't you tell my whole life story?
I mean, you say you didn't have pivotal moments, and I'm
so
like,
you-
from outside looking in, and I'm like, those are big moments. Those are stretch moments. It might not be where it got you to your faith and
It did
leader.
stretch me. Okay, so
Yeah.
so there are those who probably don't know that I had that. So
Yeah.
in when was that? In 2009 was when I became a worship leader, and I did that for 4 or 5 years. And in that space, I felt like the right people kept coming into my life. You know how the right people just keep falling in without you
Yeah.
searching? In that space of when I'm leading the team was when I became friends with this amazing producer who was like, I'm going to produce an album for you. And I never thought about being an artist. I just thought about I love to sing. I'm going to sing in my church. And having a friend who happens to be a music producer who wants to work with me and create an album for me was like, okay, let's do this. So that also stretched me and say, okay, is my voice actually what I think it is? And why I always give credit back to God is that sometimes you take a step and you do something and you're like, I don't really have much plan. I'm just gonna like throw this out there, and the Lord enlarges it. So I created that album in 2013, 3 to 4 years after I became a worship leader. I released my first album in March 2013. I remember then because that was my birthday month, March 2013. And the way the Lord did it back in New York, where the turnout from so many churches,
Yeah.
it was massive.
Yeah.
The album launch concert was massive, beyond
And-
what I envisioned as
And you
a
had,
23-year-old.
a good team of people
I
around
had
you.
an amazing team.
Amazing band, people that were willing to go
They
all the way.
They went all the way for
you.
me. I think
Yeah.
when I look back to my time in New York, I just feel gratitude. I feel loved.
Yeah.
I feel whenever I visit New York, the love I receive from my people there, I feel overwhelmed.
The interesting
I feel
part is even
overwhelmed.
when this is like we're talking about over 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and the fact that people are still like asking you about why you're not making more music.
I know, it's
And
pressure.
you went back to New York.
The pressure is
You
high.
went back to New York, and somebody was like, oh my God, this is EJ.
Where's your album? My
You know,
gosh.
like there's a horror, and
Yeah.
it's funny how there were that season, and I don't believe it's over, but that was a milestone for you.
So the way I see it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the Lord has been teaching me so much that in
Yeah.
that season of my life when I was doing music so actively,
Yeah.
right? I didn't realize when I begin to form my identity around this thing I was doing in this period of time. So my identity became EJ, the singer, worship leader, artist. That when I'm not doing it, the conversation is where's your next music became like a heavy burden on me.